took me 84 hours to 100% Silksong, which when you compare it to how long to beat a website should tell you how good I am at this game. Not very. Regardless, I had a lot of fun and a bit less of not fun, and I wanted to share what I liked and disliked about this game, as well as share my thoughts on some other things in regards to it. This is a spoiler-full video when it comes to gameplay, but I will keep some of the stuff that surprised me vague, so it could surprise you as much. However, this isn't the kind of game that gets ruined by spoilers, except for one thing that I wish certain YouTubers would be more cautious revealing. With that said, let's begin. Hollow Knight Silksong is a long-awaited sequel to Hollow Knight. Hornet, our new player character, who was a side character in the previous game, is being transported in a cage over some wonky bridge. She uses this opportunity to escape, but the cage ends up falling quite the distance. While it does break, the fall itself gives her amnesia. Well, kind of. The concussion makes her forget what she was capable of in the previous game. From then on, her goal is to figure out why she was or is hunted, which for her means showing up at kidnapper's doorstep with her needle drawn. But that will be a long journey of regaining strength, helping some bugs along the way, as well as killing a lot of mad ones and figuring out why have they went mad in the first place. Gameplay wise, it's a Metroidvania platformer with focus on combat. The game is visually charming, even more than the first one. When I was playing it, I was like, oh yeah, this is how I remember Hollow Knight looking, but then I went back to look at Hollow Knight and it's like abundantly clear that Silksong looks so much better. But in a way that's hard for me to describe. It's just better animated and better drawn. The areas themselves are also a lot more open due to Hornet's more agile moveset. Ledge grab took some getting used to, and I did take damage because of it a couple of times, but ultimately it made the movement more fun, especially early on when you don't have the wall jumping yet. The ability to run plays a huge role not only in traversing, as besides running itself, it allows you to do this dash in the air that gets you further, but in combat as well, because besides serving as a dash to dodge attacks, it unlocks a new attack that is extremely fun to use. It often propels you in the air, allowing you to continue your combo with a normal attack or air attack that pushes you back into the air again. It's just very fun to use and it changes depending on which crest you have equipped. Grappling move you can unlock further in the game is also tremendous for traversing and combat. It allows you to reach areas you couldn't reach before, sometimes in a very visually satisfying manner, and for combat it's especially useful for flying enemies to shorten the distance between you and them. The crests I mentioned themselves is a very fun addition as well. They change your attacks and sometimes binds. I'm sorry for not calling it by its proper name, but the Venom crest, as I called it, was my favorite one. Because its running attack does 2 hits and it's so satisfying to catch bosses with your Venom tentacles. It's not the crest I played the most with, as it is quite a challenge since you can't heal anytime you want, but it's definitely the one I had the most fun with. I also really like the follow-up attack on the running attack that the Swift crest has. I think it's the only one that has it. There's a lot of cool tools to try out. You're heavily restricted with the amount you can equip, so it forces you to experiment with different combinations. There is 2 tools in particular that are basically on easy game mode, and one of them you can get relatively soon in the game, and yes, I like that I need to unequip those if I want to try something different. I like the restrictive amount of particularly blue slots, which are the most powerful in the game. As I said, it allowed for some fun experimentation. While I like the music, I subscribe to the opinion that it's too quiet. Give yourself a favor, raise the volume of the game while lowering sound effects volume. My top 3 favorites were the Cogwork Core, the Choral Chambers, of course, and even the wrestling theme is quite nice. This is the type of game that makes you forget time exists. For me, the quintessential Silksong and Hollow Knight moment is when you have multiple things you want to do and it feels like every one of them leads to more things to do, to the point where it's almost a relief to explore an old area with new abilities and discover only an item or extra currency. Because other times, You think you will just run for a quick errand before proceeding with the main story and end up discovering 3 new locations with 2 new boss fights. It's phenomenal, and sleep only gets in your way. There is a surprising amount of progress that happens to the world and the characters in it. They travel from one place to the other, while old areas sometimes find new purpose. You can free a thief earlier in the game and he shows up 3 more times later on, even becoming one of the traders you can buy items from. I won't give any more examples except for one that I find semi-funny. I donated down a bunch of shards to get the bridge built, then I stepped on the bridge, thought to myself, hold on, this is breakable, there has to be a secret there, and broke the bridge, fully forgetting that I just donated to get it built in the first place. But it ended up being a good thing, because a character died in that town that they had to bury by throwing him in the pit that the bridge was originally built to cover. Another thing I liked is a little related to the previous one, but what I can only describe as pattern breaks. Or simply put, the game is surprising in places where you don't expect it to be surprising gameplay-wise. There is a reason my character is looking at a bench while I'm saying this. An example would be a certain NPC that instead of dealing damage to you does something different. It was probably already spoiled to you if you haven't played the game yourself, but I got lucky not knowing that it's coming and was really surprised with how awesome that whole sequence was. I think by breaking certain patterns that were established in gameplay, it allows for those mechanics to feel more like actual part of the world rather than something that is there only for the player. Like, here's an example I don't feel bad about spoiling because it's early in the game. When you're meeting Chakra for the first time, she does this war screech. This is something that all bosses do before the fight, so for a split second you're under the impression that you found another boss and you're about to fight, but no, this is just how she says hello. It's a little bit surprising, but stack those surprises up and they end up helping the immersion a ton. While at the same time not breaking them too often, where you feel like you can't rely on established rules and cues. Boss fights. So many boss fights. Completely optional ones as well. Combat in general is great, it's the main focus of the game, as well as exploration, and both of those are awesome, with a few hiccups. Compass has to be equipped to work. I dislike it because it creates opportunity cost for something that should have been a basic feature, as the lack of that feature only serves to waste your time in more ways than one. If it is unequipped, the only thing it truly affects is how much time you spend looking on the map figuring out where you are. This does not feel fun, this feels like a waste of time. If it is equipped, then in the early game you won't have the magnet equipped. If the magnet is unequipped, all it really does is make you spend a bit of extra time to pick up loose rosaries. And of course you're losing more rosaries since they are more likely to fall into an unfortunate spot. While picking up loose rosaries is not exactly fun, I don't see this ability as something that should have been a basic feature, unlike simply knowing where you are. You need loose rosaries most of all in the early game, but between magnet and compass you will likely choose compass. Later in the game you are less likely to care about loose rosaries, so you won't be wasting your time picking them up, so the magnet from my point of view doesn't have the opportunity cost. It's a solid choice to not use it, but I cannot imagine anyone actually unequipping compass, except for before a boss fight and then equipping it back after the boss fight, which is once again a not fun waste of players' time. Not all crests have 2 slots for compass plus something else, so you're forced to not use other items simply because you don't want to waste time figuring out where you are on the map. Later in the game, when you unlock crest independent item slots, this makes opportunity cost less harsh, but I'll say it again, it comes way later in the game. And even then, I'd argue you still feel obliged to have it there instead of something more interesting. Navigation should have been a basic ability. Possible solutions could have been make compass a special item that doesn't need to be equipped, similar to map and quill, or something that would soften the blow is to use an already existing feature of crest independent items, just give the player 1 extra slot at the beginning of the game. I dislike that you leave behind a cocoon after your death that holds all your rosaries and extra silk you unlocked. If you die again, old cocoon disappears, destroying all the rosaries you've had in there. I dislike this mechanic because you feel forced to go back to the place of your death instead of exploring other paths. It hurts exploration. Going back to the place of your death taking as little risk as possible on your way to your corpse is not exploration, it's backtracking. It's not fun, and it's to the detriment of other choices you could have made were you not to worry about your Cocoon. And at first glance, the game has a mechanic to prevent this worry, but I think it does not succeed in that. Let me explain. You can turn rosaries into jewelry. Converting all rosaries you are carrying into strings or necklaces costs between 10 to 25% of total amount you had, at least according to my research. Now let's think about this for a second. I will simplify to avoid over-explaining, but I think the argument will still stand. Imagine a point in time in front of a vendor where you have an X amount of rosaries on hand. When later on you die, one of four things will happen depending on whether you decided to buy jewelry. A. You did not buy jewelry, you retrieve Cocoon, you keep 100% of X. B. You did buy jewelry, you retrieve Cocoon, you keep 80% of X, since you spent that amount on buying jewelry in the first place. C. You did not buy jewelry, you failed to retrieve a Cocoon, you lose 100% of X. D. You did buy jewelry, you failed to retrieve a Cocoon, you keep 80% of X. Now, subjectively speaking, the probability of A and B is 95%. Vast majority of the time you will successfully retrieve your Cocoon. Probability of C and D is about 5%, if not less. So, would you rather, with 100% probability, lose around 20% of total amount of money you have, or have a 5% probability to lose 100% of your money? Now, IRL, yeah, I'm paying my 20%, but in Silksong, I'm taking my chances. Keep in mind that you will spend the rosaries on items with every chance you get, so it's not like you're losing a lot even when you are losing 100%. Those are the reasons why I barely used this jewelry mechanic. However, even if I did, I don't think it would help much. For one, you get attached to whatever amount you made, whether it's 100 or 1000 matters little, it's just psychological. For two, there is still all your extra silk in that Cocoon, so if you were to went out exploring and stumbled upon one of over 9000 optional boss fights, you are now at a disadvantage. How dared you to explore instead of backtrack to your corpse? You should have known better. At the end of the day, there is no actual heavy cost for dying. Cocoon with all your rosaries just seems like there is one. Most of the time you will get to your Cocoon without issues and get everything back, paying no price for your death except for unfun period of time spent backtracking. And only once in a while you will lose a bunch of rosaries, but it's likely won't be a huge amount since you've spent everything you could on items or maybe even jewelry. I lost my Cocoon at least 10 times during my playthrough, but it's nothing compared to the amount of times I actually died. And even those few times when I did have a lot of rosaries in it, I was still able to get back lost rosaries fairly quickly. So, if there is no actual gameplay consequence to dying, why are we then even making players feel like they have to backtrack to the place of their death, taking as little risk as possible instead of enjoying the game, exploring wherever, fighting whoever? Possible solution could have been leave behind all your Cocoons after each death, not just the latest one, and also to not take away silk after death, or have an alternative punishment system. I think even taking away some percentage of rosaries after each death would have been more interesting in terms of what choices it forces players to make. More people would engage with the rosary jewelry system, or decide to go back and spend their rosaries on items before going back to the boss. Or to make Silk Eaters an item that is already in the game and basically recovers your Cocoon when you use it, way more common, way earlier in the game. Okay, in fairness, leaving silk behind does serve one good purpose. You will die to bosses. Some bosses have long runbacks where you are likely to take damage. So, when you'll get back to your Cocoon, breaking it returns all your extra silk, essentially granting you one free heal before boss fight, or one extra powerful attack if you were careful on your way there. If this mechanic was not present, you'd have to fight NPCs before a boss if you accidentally took damage or wanted to start with an ability. So it's good it does that, but I would prefer not having runbacks to bosses at all. I dislike backtracking to bosses, a phenomena I didn't know has a name, but it turns out it's called runbacks, and it's not fun, and it needlessly wastes your time. The closest bench to the boss fight is always 10 seconds away from the boss itself, at best. Usually they are around 30 seconds away, with some exceptions where they can take even longer. And it's annoying. The fun of fighting a boss should be fighting a boss, not traveling to it. I've heard the argument that runbacks supposed to enhance the feeling of victory you get from finally beating a boss, and it's just not the case. This year I replayed Fury. Die on a boss, immediate restart. Black Myth Wukong always had shrines right before boss fights. God of War had checkpoints. I spent 8 hours fighting Gna on the hardest difficulty, and I can assure you, having runbacks would not enhance the satisfaction of beating her. It would only add frustration to each failed try. And I basically confirmed this hypothesis with my playthrough of Silksong, but more on that later. Possible solutions could have been an automatic checkpoint before bosses. It is the most obvious one, but I also can't lie, it is the one that I understand why they avoid it. This cohesiveness of the world is definitely something they strive to achieve. And since the game only saves you on benches and nowhere else, except for some story parts, then I can appreciate the desire to keep it that way. Maybe a better solution would be some sort of manual device that allows you to save before boss fights in exchange for rosaries. Like, think of those machines you can find that give you silk for rosaries. Something like that. Some lore-friendly statue or item or ability that would allow you to set a checkpoint before boss fight. Or have some other way to cut those absolute waste of a time runbacks. Maybe even leave the choice to have them in the hands of the player. You know how in DMC 3 you could choose between yellow and gold with no explanation whatsoever as to what that is? Well, this choice actually determines what save system you will be using. Gold means restarting the whole level after your death, and yellow means restarting but from the same room. Maybe when starting the game, Silksong could present you with a choice as to how would you like to play. This is the first of the 2 DMC3 references in the video. I dislike that you need to use a bench to change your inventory or crest. Once again, this is just a waste of time. I don't know what else is there to say about it. I was gonna give myself a counter argument that changing crests on the fly or just throwables would allow player to cheese certain bosses via throwables, but after doing some experimenting, or more precisely, after unlocking the Architect crest, I'm fully convinced that even as it is, without changing anything in the game, it would not be possible for a player to kill every boss with throwables. There is just always not enough shards to constantly fully restock your throwables. You might have been able to cheese a boss like once in a while, and you'd only have one attempt to do it, otherwise items go bye-bye. So, like, yeah, there is no reason why player is disallowed from changing the equipment on the fly. I would also prefer to be able to craft with a button anywhere I want as well, but that's not as big of a deal. Which is not to suggest that the original deal is big, but it's definitely bigger than crafting is only allowed on benches deal. Would also be kind of cool to switch crests or at least abilities with right stick, like you pull to the right, boom, this crest is active. Pulled again, next one is active. Pulled left, previous one is active. Or be able to change abilities that way. We totally could have had like Hornet with all Virgil abilities, but that's just a wishlist territory. And there's too many abilities and crests for that to actually be very useful. One counter-argument I heard for why you can't change inventory willy-nilly is it demonstrates Hornet's determination. So this gameplay mechanic helps showcase her character. And it's like, sure. You know, like, has any of you thought, wow, Hornet is so determined. Once you changed your inventory, there is really no messing around with it further. Or has any of you thought that Kratos was indecisive because you as a player kept changing armor mid-fight? I did think Hornet was determined, but not because of this gameplay mechanic, but because of how she carries herself in conversations and cutscenes. In fact, all this gameplay mechanic did was show her as indecisive, because she constantly kept doing this shit. This and that. Okay, time to go. Oh, wait, shit, forgot that. Okay, now it's not. Actually, I do like this throwable more. Let me change it. Okay, now I'm ready to go. Actually, hold on a second. I've enjoyed every crest, but the Beast Crest is just unnecessarily the worst one, which is sad because visually it looks like tons of fun. It has the worst heal, where after binding you also need to kick an enemy 3 times. Every hit restores health, which is fine, but then it stops. Which is fine, all crests heal 3 HP, but this is the one that encourages attacking. I feel like it would be thematic if you could just either heal a little more or keep healing yourself, but not beyond the point of 3 HP healed max. Essentially allowing you to tank incoming damage because you can heal it back with your attacks. But that's not how it works. It also has the worst downward air attack. Oh, what's that? You thought the default Hunter Crest was hard? Get ready to do advanced trigonometry on the fly, like you're fucking Spider-Man. But it's fine. I used it enough to get used to it. It's fine. Even the running attack is fine. Again, it takes some getting used to. Probably the hardest to pull off out of all crests, but once again, you can get used to it. As if this crest wasn't difficult enough, you only have 0 blue slots. And blue items are the best ones in the game, or rather, they are the ones that make your life easier the most. And you get none of them with this crest. You have 1 in your crest independent slot, but no slots on the crest itself. Like, I really tried to find a good use for it, man, and understand what is the payback for the hardest moveset and no blue slots, but I really couldn't find the reason to use it. Binding allegedly makes your attacks stronger, but I really did not find them to be that much stronger. I dislike that grappling move requires Silk. Sometimes in platforming challenges it's just kinda annoying, because you forget it does that. I get that she uses Silk to do this move, but I think there is an obvious solution that would convey the same thing but avoid player frustration, which is simply immediately spend Silk that is in the process of generation, just poof, gone, generation reset. Or make it blink like the running upgrade does. I get this would make Silk Hearts upgrades less useful perhaps, and it's really not a big deal. It just feels weird because it looks like a movement option, but it requires Silk. And for context, using it on foes immediately grants you Silk back. So it is truly only in platforming where you even notice this, and it doesn't happen that often. What can I say? We are in a nitpick territory. The game was clearly developed first and foremost for the gamepad, and keyboard controls are fine, they allow you to use the mouse. Looking at you, Celeste, how is it still the case that I need to download a separate mod just to be able to grapple and dash with the mouse? However, there are a few hiccups. I beat most of the game with gamepad, but a few times I tried keyboard, I couldn't help but notice 4 issues in order of importance. Most important, in settings, you specifically can't bind any menu to any button, except for one menu. Binding a button to that one will just open your last opened tab. If this was not the case, second issue would be a lot less important, which is you can't switch tabs easily in menu. Most other games, you just press E to go to the right, Q to go to the left, basically shoulder button functionality for E and Q. I could not find a way to change tabs easily on a keyboard. Also, you cannot assign scroll wheel up and scroll wheel down. I mean, how cool would it be to have grappling assigned to the scroll wheel down, eh? No one? Only me? And also, there is no double assigns. You cannot have the same action assigned to 2 different buttons. Again, not a big deal, but would be nice. Some fights seems like they were unfair. What I mean by unfair is enemies' attacks were unpredictable, therefore impossible to dodge. Or their positioning is in the way of where your character is naturally going. However, Still Soul Run exists. When you die in this mode, it erases your save file, so devs must be pretty confident that there is no unfair attacks from enemies. And for me to claim it confidently would require a lot of footage review, so I'll just assume I'm wrong. I did try to review a few moments that I found to be ridiculous. Over here, my counterattack ability just didn't trigger. My best guess is it's because I was facing away from the enemy. I'm not sure it should work like that. One of the bosses seems to have two different ways of acting upon the same cue. One attack can be dodged by jumping and the other one by running away, but they are not interchangeable, so failing to guess which one it is will result in you taking damage. And most of all, the second butterfly fight. Oh my god! This situation is literally what do you do meme. There is nothing I can do here to not take damage. Could I have better positioned myself beforehand? I don't know. As I say, Still Soul run exists, so I trust that there is a way to not take damage in this fight, but damn man, did it feel unfair in the moment. Oh yeah, also his fog attack, I'm confident that there needs to be like a better indication how far it reaches. Like, look at this. There was an 8.5-year gap between two games. Silksong has begun development as a Hollow Knight DLC around the time of Grim Troop DLC in 2018, and then grew to be a full sequel, which is why you will hear that the game took 7 years to make. I just feel like the phrase, "this game took 7 years to make," can create heightened expectations, which I fell victim to, and I want to highlight that developers themselves never said that the game took 7 years to make, and they've been doing stuff in between, like the Godmaster DLC and Hollow Knight Nintendo Switch port. As I mentioned, I kinda fell victim to heightened expectations, but there is also a bit more than that. I don't know, it's more of the game feels the same than I expected. Like, the map is the same, saving system is the same, dialogue system is the same, where you need to talk a few times with NPC just to make sure you heard everything and they won't suddenly give you a quest on their third line or say something new. That's a pet peeve of mine. Items still need to be bought one by one. Like, you see what I'm saying? It really feels like it's a DLC, just way bigger. Near the end of the game, you can obtain an item that shows how close you are to the full completion, and I think this would be a perfect opportunity to straight up place markers on everything you've missed. Now, I basically was missing only 4 items, 2 throwables, 2 blue ones, so it's not bad. But completionists, they like the checklist aspect of it, not the, oh, I can't wait to go back and explore this whole gigantic map all over again to find one single breakable wall where the hidden item is. 100% of the people who want to 100% this game will just Google where remaining items are, which is exactly what I did. However, I understand that there are people who want to be surprised by the game on their subsequent playthroughs and would prefer to actually not see this info. I'm just not one of them. You know, I've been trying to keep footage for this video variable and sane, but I can't overstate how much of the footage is me entering the room and hitting every single wall in the room, even when it's the room I've already been in, and I still managed to miss a few breakable ones. It did not annoy me while I was playing, but looking at the footage made me understand people who install a mod that highlights breakable walls a lot more. I want to go back to my Runbacks don't make victory feel better rant. I know it's the case not only because it's the case in other games, but also because at the very end of Act 2, where I decided to sweep the map one last time before finishing the game, this toad has finally broke me. Bro, there will be grandpas telling their grandchildren about this fucking runback. And yeah, I was done with the game wasting my time, and I installed a mod that allowed you to choose to resurrect near a boss if you died on one, or go back to the bench. Now, by sheer irony, the moment I installed this mod was the attempt where I finally beaten him. But yeah, every next boss after that one, yeah, it was such a relief, and it did not take away the joy of overcoming a boss even slightly. There is also a mod that allows you to change inventory anywhere, and it made experimentation so much more fun and easy. There are mods that allow you to craft throwables anytime, don't lose rosaries upon death, and one that makes Beast Crest actually useful. There is even one that adds mouse support to menus. Holy shimo, how is this not in the game? And if you will be playing on keyboard and mouse, I highly recommend the mod that allows you to zoom out a little bit. If you're playing close to the monitor, it's basically a must-have. And as you can guess, I consider the mod that allows you to have compass effect always equipped also a must-have. Basically, literally all my issues with Silksong are already fixed by mods. And yes, if you love video games and you don't have a lot of free time for runbacks, I highly recommend installing mods to help with that. It's incredibly easy to do. There is even one that allows you to resurrect right at the spot you died, but yeah, I do think that is going a bit too far from the artistic intent. Silksong release was an event. When was the last time the release of the game broke storefronts so much people couldn't even buy the game? I know Team Cherry is against pre-orders based, but who knows, maybe Hollow Knight Zod Song should have one, just to avoid same situation again. I just hope it'll take less than 8 years this time.